current operational, so nothing there burning anyone. Thank you, councillors. All right, you can see obviously there as well the upcoming agenda items coming forward. We did raise, and then mainly just I suppose to see if there's place an expectation as to something that should have been or you assumed was coming to those meetings, just to make sure that that's still on track. No questions there?
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. I think it's obvious through the schedules that relate to each committee and also the general meeting and strategy meeting that we are behind with the delivery of reports to council. So there is going to have to be a recalibration, and that'll see some of those meeting reports to go into early 2018, and it will certainly see the consolidation of some reports that are related to one another for streamlining purposes. It has got away from us a bit, so we need to dig a bit deeper and catch up. And in the process of doing that, we'll just reprioritise some of those items early next year.
Any other comments otherwise about that? All right, councillors. All right, material personal interest, conflict of interest, personal gifts and benefits. Anyone has anything to add? Well, councillors, I do have a perceived conflict of interest in agenda item number 13.2, which is a development application that Jamie will speak to later on. So I will be leaving the room, and Deputy Mayor Gale will chair that part of the meeting while that is being discussed and put into here. Any other? Not got anything. It's nearly Christmas time. I'm sure there must be a gift to the third at some point. Okay, we'll work on that. Well, councillors, if there's none others, our first report relates to the family riding carcass on page 25 of your agendas. And certainly, Daniel will introduce Mark Eagle, Manager of Parks and Recreation. So if you could start our first report, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For you, Councillor, you recall this particular report in a slightly amended version was presented to the Community Standing Committee in October. We didn't have a consensus then to progress. There's been a number of additions to this report. In particular, the recommendation here is to, in principle, agree to, for the land described as 13 DSN 8086, located 13 kilometres west of Emerald on a temporary basis as a family riding park. So the important part is they're just in principle supporting that as our recommendation. There's a number of additions as well in terms of some information around the frontage to the state highway and some other particular information around that which Mark can touch on, and a further addition around an alternate use for the area as well in terms of the addition of mountain bike riding as a potential outcome. So I'll hand it over to Mark to outline some of the details there as well.
Thank you, Dan. This parcel of land there is a map there, and I'm sure that everyone's familiar with the parcel we're talking about west of Emerald. As mentioned, there has been a report where this was covered off in some detail. There's been some amendments, and particularly to the resolution in around the fact that we're seeking to have this agreed to in principle. And the other part of that amendment, and I'll just mention that before we get into any of the level of detail, we're basically looking at, with that agreement in principle, it would then be up to an incorporated community group to move forward and progress with the use of that parcel of land. As mentioned, there's been there's a series of material referred to in there, different considerations around the use of the site. And as mentioned, one of the main ones is the frontage to the state highway. Unfortunately, there is no other access point, so that is a consideration. And again, we're not after council to make any decisions around that. Again, an interested community group would have to take that into account. And, you know, again, that is subject to further discussions with the department on what their view of that would be, and that would need to have further details provided to them around what expected numbers and the like would be before they would be able to provide any firm estimate of what exactly they would accept. Obviously, turning off the highway, you've then got the railway corridor, and again, there's been no discussion at this point. And again, that would have to be, once a group was formed, that would have to be one of their considerations that they took into account moving forward. Other issues, there is a small section of vegetation there. From our view of things that we've had today, there's probably some definitive ways that can be managed and worked around. We don't believe that's a total showstopper at this point in time. But again, these are the types of things that are going to need to be considered if council agreed in principle to this use. There is absolutely no development on site at present. So again, that would need to be carefully considered as to the level of embellishment that was going to occur. And again, at this stage, we would not be putting forward any suggestion as to what that may be, other than what one would ordinarily think may be necessary in terms of some sort of amenity complex, and obviously the potential possibility of caretaker type arrangements. But again, that's not what we as a council are trying to determine at this point in time. We're making it quite clear that there would need to be a tender arrangement in place, and that would have to be on a temporary basis until council, in its discussions on this block of land, determine what future potential use there was going to be. Junior Motocross have obviously been contacted along this journey by the group that's been considering options. Again, there was a small track put in on site at the current motocross facility out at Mosquito Creek, but at this point in time, that has never been really considered a goer by the group or by an active community group that's basically been allowed to revegetate. If council was to consider the proposal to agree in principle, then the next steps would be for the community to be tested as to whether there was any interest from the group to form a user group that would manage and seek funding, I guess, for any type of development that might want to be occurring in relation to the riding of motorbikes. And as has since been suggested, potentially as a mountain bike, riding area, which would potentially be able to run in conjunction with the other one, obviously not at the same time. So at this stage, I guess, like I say, the recommendation's there for agreement in principle, and I guess I open it up to any questions around that.
Councillor Ross, yeah.
So Mark, you're talking about 2 user groups now, are you? One motorbike and one mountain bike riding group?
Potentially.
2 user groups. They would both have to have constitutions incorporated, and have the liability insurance.
Yep.
They would both have to have tenure over the area.
There would be likely to be a tenure arrangement with one group, and then the other group would have essentially an MOU with the main group.
So would that second group be able to apply for funding?
I believe so.
With
Sorry?
with an MOU on it?
I believe so.
I consider that this is, and you've said that it's not necessarily necessary for being part of the game plan. Why specifically is motorbike sports not, and mountain bike sports not part of the game plan?
The game plan specifically for an organised sport, I don't believe the family riding park would be considered a sport. And similarly, the mountain bike group, I don't believe that would be also considered at this point in time as a sporting organisation. But that could be, it's one of those ones that could go either way. It could be discussed through the game plan group.
Yeah. Through the chair, if I can add, I think importantly, the recommendation here is looking to principally support this area for this use. So we're still a long way back from getting any progress or any traction with a particular group that might want to or might be able to progress here. I think once that was established, we would need to connect that group into the particular tenure arrangements that the game plan will be progressing with.
So I have a further question there.
Yeah.
That what is the time frame then for this to be without a incorporated group and just a riding park, fun riding park? What's the time frame? Is this going to go on for as long as they wish before they become an incorporated group and become part of, because council is liable until they do such?
Until such time as the group's formed and all the necessary things are put in place, it wouldn't be opened up for that activity.
You wouldn't have access to that area until.
So I see that the process would be, if this council was to give in principle agreement, then the group would be contacted and said, righto, in principle, you have the opportunity of letting us know what you propose to do, and that would be the next step. So that would be just the first step.
And that next step would come back to council.
That's right.
That's exactly right. There'd be a next step that would come back to you. And in the meantime, if someone else expressed some interest and said, oh, we're interested in something, or we could say to this group, well, look, we have people interested in it, well, what are you doing? So at the moment, nothing happens there. So this is what I suspect is what is being simply asked here today. So at the moment, it's the vacant site.
Through the mayor, it was only 16 months ago that we were sitting here discussing the possibility of a meat work processing plant being established there. And we were concerned at that time that we might be inhibiting it, a processing plant may be better located somewhere else. for the possibles, this site to be open to heavy mining equipment with Alpha and the Galilee. And now we're looking at tipping it to a community centre organisation temporarily, on the basis that it may only be temporarily. So have we squashed all the other options? Is that what we're doing?
Well, I don't know whether squashed is the right word, but I mean, there are no other options. I mean, it was considered as in the processing works, I suppose, strategy on the basis that it was actually land that we had control of, and that strategy moved along to, you know, the practicalities of, for instance, water to this site would cost $25 million. So it would become, even if you were considering it to be heavy industry, well then you'd be asking, you know, our planners to look at something that would say you'd have to have water to the site and potentially firefighting capacity, and those sorts of costs would be there again. So the reality was, whilst it was considered in the original strategy, that was based purely on land that council owned or had control of. So in a very, I suppose you'd say, primitive sort of, I suppose, match up at the start, that was the only reason why this site was considered. And obviously subsequently issues like access, type 2 road train access, access to utilities clearly identified as being an appropriate site. So I wouldn't like to think that we were sort of weighing up the use of it now against something that was practically never going to go to anywhere. So I think that's, sorry, Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, I think it's only a month ago probably that we had a vote on this. And we voted against having any further implications until they were incorporated and we had people to go forward. And I think that must have been in the community's meeting.
The resolution was to bring back further information because there are some questions there that council had concerns over, and what Mark and Daniel have done, I believe, for council through the mayor, is they've answered some of those questions. And that was the request of council a month ago.
But they still haven't been incorporated or anything.
I think through the mayor, if I can add, this is certainly an indication that council would support some allocation of land for them to go ahead on. One of the real concerns from the community perspective is if they're going to invest a lot of time and energy into building an organisation that has no, that the council doesn't support anywhere for them to go. So this is the sort of step in the right direction from the council perspective to indicate to the group that there is a level of support somewhere. Maybe this is the right parcel of land for them, but to certainly indicate that council does have land.
That wasn't like what Councillor Nixon and I was saying is, you know, I'm going to say that and back her on this point is that I thought what we were saying was we wanted the council to go away and form the group and help form the group, and bring the group together, and then the group would come back and sort of talk to us about sites and land. I don't know whether this is the best site or our piece of land at Emerald Downs is the best site, where the dog people are and all that, that's a nice little place over there, or some other place is a good site. But I thought what we were saying was this is, I think what we're thinking is that the cart's before the horse here, and that is council belief that this is an extremely different type of organisation group request that we need to fulfil. Yes, I think we sort of said yes, but the police and everybody says that this thing's been a long time out coming. My understanding from the last meeting was that we didn't want you to come back with here it is, the piece of land, and let's start with a piece of land and work backwards, but let's go the other way, and that is go away, help form the group, give us, and council's quite happy to give them as much support to get them formed, and then for them to come back with a nice proposal. I think we've just got the cart before the horse again, and that is we're starting with the land and then trying to work back this group. So I mean, for me, if I was writing this request to council, I'd be saying something like that council supports the development of these number of groups that are involved with this type of riding, this type of bike and motorbike riding, and that we then develop up a proper strategy and a proposal. I think what you're trying to do is to start with a block of dirt and come back the other way, and it's the wrong way going about this whole issue. I think that's what you're saying, Al. That's what we said to you last time.
That's what I said
That was only a
last
month ago.
Well, that's not, I don't think that's quite right, Mr. Mayor. The challenge is, I've got the comment here, if there was a further information is to be gathered and that will be presented at the general meeting the 24th of October, that was Spring Shore, and you'll note there that we never had that report, and we said that we'd bring it to this meeting, and we're here. But I don't recall it as you say, not exactly. The challenge here is that there's an opportunity for council to support an initiative that will probably die off if we can't indicate that there's a willingness to help do something. It's very difficult for well-intentioned community members and business owners to get together, formalise a group, obtain insurance, and then come to council with a proposal for land where the current enterprise. So this is about saying that this type of thing could happen on this site if you can get across the massive hurdle of traversing the rail line, and if you can form a body, and if you can demonstrate to us a model that minimises any risk exposure or eliminates any risk exposure to council. There's much work that they would have to achieve in order to make this fly. And if you notice in the resolution or the proposed motion, it does say that any proposed arrangement would require council approval. Nothing happens until you say so. This is basically saying, go ahead and work on it. You know, we support it in principle.
So what we're saying is we support one site. Doesn't say we're supporting this in principle, or we're supporting other options, or the gifting of it from some private person, or any other thing. We're just saying we're supporting one site and go and build a custom arrangement around that. What we're saying is build the arrangement with the people, with the two different groups. There's one group before, now it's two. Get those things right, and we are happy to support, you know, whatever comes back, and even into to the extent of what I'm saying is that, you know, we've got to throw a little bit of meeting time, support with meetings, minutes, getting things happening. But we can do that sort of stuff because of the difference this group is in its formation and what it, you know, I suppose it's and the complexities in some ways of this particular activity because of noise and other things that, but also then because of the amount of, you know, people that are involved with it. And you know, this concept's been brought to us by police and others in the past about for very valid reasons. But what we're saying here is, and I think is what we're saying is, we've got one site. Let's build a case around the site. That's not, well, what I think the council was saying was, go away and come back. This is the right site. Let it all be worked out. But let people have the option of, let's have a look at all other things as well. And that's what we're saying. And let's just give them some. Let us, if we have to, as I said, we've got some staff and others that can help get this thing going and to give them the impetus to get through, I think, what's been 4 years of muck and weeds, and this has been around for a long time. Well, let's give them the impetus to get through that process, but not necessarily just bury ourselves in one side just because. That's all I can't vote for it.
This was going to be a 15-minute discussion, I appreciate, but I thought this was quite soft. And it was quite a reasonable expectation. I mean, there's a piece of land that someone's just asking, would you considering on an in-principle basis, that then talks about coming back and any proposed arrangement would require council approval. I just don't see why you wouldn't give them the opportunity.
Well, why do we, if I was given the opportunity, but why are we committing to that parcel of land?
Well, part of the reason why it's about parcel of land is so that a company can design a track so that they can, develop an environmental management plan.
What is wrong with Mosquito Creek?
Well, look, we'll answer that in a minute, but the challenge if it's generic and it's not about a parcel of land is it's very difficult to come up with designs and environmental management plans and processes around a hypothetical site. But, you know, I sense there's a lot of goodwill here today, and based on what Councillor Bell's saying, is that council, or he is, supportive and would find a home for it once the proposal was articulated a little bit better. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I just don't know why that isn't solved enough. Why would you not give them the chance?
Because we're describing a lot of land and we're going to work on a lot of land backwards. All I'm saying is that why shouldn't we be saying that the Central and Regional Council agrees to support help coordinate the development of a proposal in regards to the temporary family riding park and for motorcycle enthusiasts, you know, I mean, I just think
We've been doing that
that's the
for
sort of
4
stuff
years.
we need to do. But we haven't done it, we haven't got a committee, we haven't got a constitution, we can do all that stuff and support those
It's hard to
people.
inspire and motivate good intentioned people if it's not about a block of land. That's the difficulty. Maybe we're a little bit too close to it because we have been working on it in the muck and weeds for 4 years. But, you know, council does have that object here today. And if you can give us better guidance on how to advance an important community initiative, you know, please do so.
Mayor, if we've been working on this for 4 years, why are we saying a temporary basis as a family riding park?
Well, that was a soft bit, I think
So-
that kind of is a soft bit, and it allows you the option of saying, well, look, it's only temporary.
It's 3
And
years.
then in 3 years' time, we can have a bottle index. So it's kind of like, what are you losing? What do you think you're giving away? What do you think you're not getting? What do you think what opportunity is someone else missing out on, or you're going to keep for someone else? Personally, letting this grab go that piece of land.
I think we're giving away a hell of a lot here on the pretense that we've got to cross railway lines, we've got to build turn-offs off
We
the
don't have to do
highways.
any of that.
There's no electricity, there's no amenities, when we've got all that infrastructure already in place. And under the game plan, we're looking at council-owned land occupied by associations. And I just see a total duplication when I've been told that Mosquito Creek is not suitable because it's an endurance track. Crikey, we're allowing a family riding park. It's softness. We're talking 5-year-old kids getting them out of the river. Well, why not give them a nice gentle bump?
No,
What's wrong with that?
I do take the point that there's.
You know, the
Fine.
whole thing contradicts. I just don't get why we're going to put ourselves in a position to duplicate what we've already got as far as infrastructure.
There's no duplication, councillor Mason, go through the mayor. What's at Mosquito Creek is a 5-kilometre enduro loop designed by the Yamaha Motorcycle Company. That's technically difficult. You need to be an experienced rider to negotiate that 5-kilometre loop. They have let it overgrow because as a group, the Emerald Junior Motocross Club, they are not interested in enduro sports or family riding parks.
Mountain bikes. That's not soft either. And I've seen the terrain out there, and it's not easy, undulating, nice, simple riding either. So the terrain out there is harsher than the terrain at Mosquito Creek.
Mosquito Creek management personnel are supportive of this concept, not occurring on their side, unless we can facilitate some land lease extensions and whatnot. But then, even if that's achieved, they're not willing to allow their infrastructure to be accessed on an ad hoc basis through the week on weekends. They operate under the arrangements of a monthly motocross event, and the gates are locked in between periods. So
Why are
unless
they
the
locked?
family riding
Why are
park
they locked?
participants are prepared to schedule their experience around that once a month meet, then they would be robbed of the opportunity to use that infrastructure.
Okay, can I ask again, why are they locked?
Because that's the government structure, that's the arrangements that the Emerald Junior Motocross Club have.
Who with?
Well, whoever their members are, the users.
Who owns the land?
I mean, the reality is we've got to make a decision about this, and quite frankly, I take the points about muck and weeds, and really, I thought this recommendation was fairly arbitrary in that it allowed for lots of things, but that was the intent of it, and I think if that's not the case, and we're just supporting people having a crack at something, that's fine, but I really don't think it's helpful if we're just going to offer everyone, you know, individual advice about things. It's about the point that's raised in the plan, in this report. This is about giving someone the opportunity of having a crack at putting something on that site. If that's not what we want, let's just say, and we'll move on, and we can go someplace else. So is that what we're saying? We're supportive, but you can't tack your opportunity to this particular block of land because we're not ready to commit at this point.
I've got no problem with the resolution, Mr Mayor. I'm sensing that people do have a particular affiliation with the land, but I don't see we've got anything to lose here other than this is an opportunity to start the conversation. If we don't like what we see, at the end of the day, we can refine it or say no or whatever. I don't understand the big fuss.
No,
I'm drawing it back to this. I mean, if someone's happy to move it, Moved by councillor Godwin Smith, seconded by councillor Brinkman. All those in favour of the recommendation? Against? Well, hang on, there's, sorry, against 5. So 1, 2, 3, it's 4 all. My casting vote is for the resolution. So is that the way it works? 5-4.
It's just carried forward.
Right. It's the long 15. All right, councillors, I've declared an interest in this next item 13.2, so Deputy Gale, I'll leave the room. Councillors, as an explanation, I provided advice to these people over, people that have seen the timeline in respect of this particular item. Council have seen the timeline in respect of this item, and I have provided prior to my time on council advice to the applicant in different aspects of this, so it's only appropriate that I declare my interest. I'll leave the room. Thank you, Deputy Gale.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So councillors, before us is development application 401.2016.1 CQ commodities provided by Sarah Murray and Associates in relation to Capricorn Highway Mall. So I will just switch straight to you, Jamie, to talk us through this one.
Yeah, no worries, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So we've received an application that proposes to subdivide a parcel of rural zone land, which is contained in the Emerald Irrigation Area on the eastern side of town. It accesses a high section of the Wingmar Tunnel, which has access to high priority water. It's 119 hectares in size today, and they're proposing to subdivide it into 5 parcels of land, which are in the vicinity between 20 and 25 hectares in size. They have provided agronomy reporting and statements, which identify that the soil types afforded on that property are quite unique in the ability to grow certain types of high value crops, which aren't necessarily seen extensively around the region today. And they've provided us with reporting which is examples of table grapes, watermelons and citrus establishment on those parcels of land and what that would look like. So they have identified that there is no opportunity for availability of that type of product in the market today, and proposing to fill that niche. The application has been assessed against all of our planning schemes and the other relevant statutory instruments which we've had to have regard to. The applicant has provided sufficient justification to consider the conflicts with subdivision and fragmentation of good quality agricultural land on the basis that it's preserved and maintained in a productive capacity, which is the intention. And we are fairly confident that we are able to condition that to continue. So the recommendation for the application is for approval subject to conditions, which are contained on pages 30 through to 34 of the council report. Any questions?
Chair, in regards to the road reserve, is it sealed, unsealed? I couldn't work it out
Yeah,
on the recommendation.
it is sealed from the highway. They access the Capricorn Highway, and once you cross the railway crossing, it goes to unsealed on Kelly's Road. Our infrastructure team have reviewed the existing standard of road and the proposed standard of the access easement, and comfortable that the existing construction is sufficient to accommodate this development.
Shall say gravel.
Yes.
I never asked to get it sealed.
It's within the irrigation area. In our motion that went through that there'd be no subdivision. It's in the general meeting a couple of meetings ago.
I haven't seen that.
And the solar farms came
After the solar farm.
TLP.
Not the sub, that restricts the use of the TLPI proposes to restrict the land uses and elevate the level of assessment for renewable energy developments on those parcels of land. The proposed major amendment similarly seeks to elevate the proposed level of assessment for that type of land use, on irrigated land, Class A and Class B land, but it doesn't, the resolutions that were made by council didn't contemplate the subdivision of land.
Any other questions?
I'm just concerned about the size of those allotments there when everyone around them are larger ones. So, like, if this gets cut into 5 sections, 5 allotments, there's nothing to stop everybody else around there cutting theirs up into very small parcels as well.
Whilst we don't have agronomy reporting for every single parcel adjoining this property, the agronomy reporting that we have received to support this application has suggested that this particular site is very unique in its soil type that would allow the productive use down to those lot sizes. We are advised that those soil types aren't experienced frequently throughout the rest of the irrigation area in that in those adjoining parcels.
So we are still saying that within the irrigation area now, we're talking about fragmenting land.
The proposal is to fragment land on the basis that it's preserved in its productive capacity. There's a condition on there, and the reporting that was provided suggests that at a minimum of 6 megalitres per hectare of water is required to productively use those sites on the basis of the crop types that were proposed. At condition 10 in the recommendation, we sought advice as to how to best word a condition around the provision of water, and option A is to that effect, which requires each lot to have a minimum access of 120 megalitres of water, and evidence to be provided to council on an annual basis of the retention of that access, or the applicant, if they choose to establish a higher intensity use that might require more substantial infrastructure through hydroponics or something to that effect, that they can create a lease lot in the first instance, develop and establish all of that infrastructure, submit information to us that shows us how it's operating at with reduced water supply due to recycling or something to that effect, and we can change that condition specifically for each lot as it's created to allow a reduced water allocation.
So it has a minimum of 6 megalitres per hectare,
Yes.
but it hasn't got 120 megalitres allocated to that block. It's only got access to 120 megalitres.
The lot today as it exists only has access to 20 megalitre allocation, so if they were to be required for us to endorse the survey plan, demonstrate our satisfaction that there's about 600 megalitres available to those 5 lots in total.
Jan, through the chair, you said that with the water that they must provide evidence of access of that amount of water per year.
Yeah.
Once it's subdivided and sold off, how do you ensure that it continues?
So we sought advice as to the wording of that condition, and that's supported in the timing element as to how that is continued, and that it is, I suppose, an administrative process that we would need to follow up on, and just with our system have a reminder in there as a trigger each year and year to. I suppose it's hard as councillors as the managing body which manages water allocations, and that managing body isn't a referral trigger to apply conditions to that. So we have had conversations with staff in that regard in terms of you've got this opportunity which you want to maximise the productivity of your agricultural land, but you've got these other barriers where it's hard to manage those risks at the same time. So,
Janet, it says proposed development does not achieve the minimum lot size for rural subdivision. So if you get if you sell off lots that can't be for rural purposes, as rural lots, you then get people that buy it for for whatever, and then you get into the problems of your biosecurity, because it's surrounded by irrigated farming land. I just see a whole lot of problems with it. I mean, if somebody goes there and says, I'm a rural producer, but No, sorry, you're not on another land that is a rural subdivision.
Yes, so the
How do you get around that?
The intention with condition 10 and the obligation for them to have that water allocation of that size, that will always continue to be a requirement of those parcels, the resulting parcels of land to hold that. So on that basis, we're not considering that it's detrimentally impacting the rural infrastructure of the irrigation channel, and that the cost of maintaining and accessing that water allocation will be cost prohibitive to not taking advantage of it.
Is that something though, a bit like covenants that lose their intensity or the meaning of the legal value over time? Is it something that, you know, once parcels are bought and sold, like, it gets lost and.
It'll only get lost if we don't keep it up to date in our record.
And that's the thing that worries me a bit.
Yeah, and we looked at if we can covenant, and it's really hard, I suppose, in trying to advance and I suppose consider also council's opportunity and trying to grow resistance and create opportunities in that space, and managing, because it's just made as a subdivision application, and all land uses to establish like a cropping land use or intensive horticulture, there isn't development under a planning scheme. So there's no trigger that we can ever pull those land use elements into that consideration of this application, unfortunately, which makes it really hard to pull in things like covenants. And we have sought advice as to how to deal with it, and if we could put a covenant on it, we would love to, because it would give a higher level of surety. But we can't legally go down this line.
So, sorry, through the chair, just so I'm clear, going back to this, like the water type to the land and the requirement to show evidence each year, what would happen if they just didn't show evidence or they didn't have the allocation anymore? What would we actually do?
Yeah, they're instantly not compliant with their development permit, and we can take enforcement action under the Planning Act, which would result in a show cause notice or but they just a mechanism to fine them, prosecution, and take them to court essentially. So council can council can take a very hard line approach in that regard, and if they're instantly in a non-compliant territory with their development permit, we have a recourse under legislation to make technical action there.
Just another question. What would happen to the buffer zone zoning that needs to be required between, I'm talking about, intensive agricultural pursuits such as cotton spraying, aerial spraying, and other blocks. So everything else that's been created, we've talked about either 200, 100, or 300 metre buffer, 400 metre buffer tree. To stop any of those processes. And the second question is, I know we did a subdivision with an easement close to town within the irrigation area once, and the easement unfortunately wasn't renewed in time by the party that required the easement, and the easement was not re-agreed to by the owner of the land. They then lost access to the river and lost access to the water. So I see this easement, again, it worries me that easements are not dedicated, and any access to any water should be fully dedicated, because easements fail. And I know that we've had that problem with an easement in the area here, one of our irrigation areas that blocks where people just can't afford to take the water right around the landholder's block and rebuild facilities and infrastructure, as opposed to where they had a very close and very, I think it was an opportune easement availability, which, as I said, ran out, and apparently the legal people didn't catch up to the time it ran out, and When they went back to the landowner and said, can we reinstate this easement, and was refused. So easements to me aren't, and there is this lot, one of the other lot, lot 3 there is totally required an easement and relying on that to undertake its activities. I think that's fragile if we're going to continue with an easement. Yeah, I just can't support this anyway. It's just me.
Is there any way, Tony, you can tighten up or some of those issues that have been raised today, to give some more confidence?
Yeah, we can try to a degree in terms of the incoming land use. We can't. We've sort of asked us to, if we can do that in any mechanism, and we can't lawfully, in terms of having relevance and reasonableness in our condition structuring, apply those conditions. And whilst the current owners may be completely accepting of them, if that was to change change ownership and it was challenged in court, it would be in breach. So it's not really worth going down that path from the advice we've received. We can definitely look at it in regards to the infrastructure elements and things to that effect, and seek more advice on specifically our assessment and condition package, and where we have room to strengthen conditions, absolutely. To elaborate on Councillor Bell's comments in regards to buffers, buffers are traditionally, the triggers are around buffering for sensitive land uses, and as they're not proposed to be sensitive land uses, whilst they could establish a house within these parcels, they will be undertaking agricultural pursuits on their own sites, so they'll be buffering themselves from their own activities. In terms of other buffers between uses, the lot to the west has been used for cotton in the past, and the lot to the south has been used for grapes. There is no visible buffer or separation between those two cropping types, and the reporting that we have received has suggested that they can operate compatibly together. Easement timing, I'm not familiar with provisions that put timing and end dates on easements. Traditionally, they will stay on there and stay with the parcel of land until both parties agree to their removal. And that's the instance as would be expected to occur here. And due to the conditions of the proposed conditions, if they were removed or weren't functioning as they're conditioned to, again, there would be non-compliance with their development permit, and we would have a recourse of the enforcement action that we could take. But we can definitely go away and look at how we can.
Yeah, through the chair, well, I take notice of the actual time frame that's gone on, just on 2 years, and I know that there's been a lot of work carried out by the planning department. And this report is quite significant compared to many other reports that we've received in recent months in regards to subdivision, i.e. the one on the Springshaw Road. So there's been a considerable amount of work, and I guess I wish to point out that we have if we look at our mission and our vision and our corporate strategies and everything, trying to improve our opportunities on a development or economic development, we don't have parcels like this anywhere in our area where we can allow small cropping to be undertaken and booster our agricultural or our horticultural food network that we're embarking on. So I think this is a tremendous opportunity for us to go forward. In regards to Councillor Bell's buffer, it's still rural. It's not getting changed as far as its zoning goes. It's the allocation to allow smaller farmers or entrepreneurs, primary developers, or not developers, but agricultural people, to get in at a smaller level to produce things like melons or flowers, horticultural type events. Could be igloos, and certainly it's in the precinct of our closeness to our transport network, our airport facilities, especially Yamla, for small things. I just think it's a really good opportunity for us to sort of dip our toes in what we want to achieve for the whole area.
Councillor McAvoy. Well, councillors, the resolution is there before you. Yep. You've got a mover on the resolution? Do we have a seconder?
No, that's, you've got to move.
Yeah,
I've got a mover, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
No seconder?
Motion lapse for want of a second.
Yeah, so I think there's an opportunity, Jamie, to pick up on some of those points that have been raised today and maybe just go and strengthen up.
What's our timeframes?
Yeah.
We can keep it as applicants being quite supportive of working with council along the way, so I'm sure they won't object to another extension.
Can we go for information request then?
We've done, or I don't know what other information is 16, making decisions. We've gone through a few, I think probably 3 or 4 further requests for information process.
So that's really just the strengthening of conditions.
Yeah, I get the impression that there's not missing information, it's more just the risk managing the risk.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was thinking. I think if you can strengthen up some of those areas in relation to the easement, water allocation,
Just to ensure that it stays as an agricultural, viable agricultural, box of land.
Just one comment. Generally, the irrigation area is 200 hectares, which is regarded as viable irrigation area within the irrigation area. And this area is already smaller than that 200 hectares.
Yeah.
It's 119. So although there are similar farms around there, which are citrus, grapes, figs are another one within that area. So
And they're actually smaller.
that's what I said.
They're already small.
Through the chair, is there a desire to review the application? Because it would be good to give staff some clarity on what the expectations are. Is it just to tighten conditions, or would you be interested in refusing it?
So only one of the main problems is the perception of people that buy places like that and think that they're going, because they've been told that they can go and do hoarding, grow trees, whatever. But then when it comes to the crunch, it's not considered rural, they won't be considered a primary producer. So there's that angle to it.
I'm a primary producer. I haven't got anything.
But you've got different sort of, so they all going to keep bees.
Why can't they get chooks? Why can't they put igloos up and do?
Well, you don't have to have land to be primary produced.
No, but you do have to, if they see that it's less than a rural subdivision, less than rural land, whatever it says there, I think that's one of the problems that you're going to come across. And I also think that as Councillor Bell was saying, the easements and the buffer zones around it, because I was around and so were you when they went through all the cotton.
I just see it that you've got a terrific commodity in this community in melons, in seedless watermelons. One of the current producers, and another one that's potentially coming online, is having to lease land. And these guys, if they want to get into it, they've got to go and buy 500 acres of prime black soil irrigation land off a cotton farm that doesn't sustain all agriculture or horticulture, when they don't need 500 acres to grow 600 tonne of watermelon per hectare. I just don't get that we're stalling. It says in our vision and it says in our mission that we're not going to stall any opportunities. And we were very adamant at the beginning of this council that we wanted to promote agriculture, horticulture and a food basin. And here we are, 12 months down the track, stalling the opportunities of many potential farms. And I don't get it.
And so, Alan makes a good point, but at the end of the day, it's got to be reflected within our planning scheme. So if we've got, if the feeling is we want to refuse it, watch on what grounds, I guess you'd be looking for that, Jamie, from this council, what grounds would be valid grounds for refusal?
Yeah.
But if it's about strengthening up some of those things, that have been raised here, and on that basis, this council would then support it, I think you need that direction today, and I don't know that you're actually getting that at the moment. So, you know, I guess we're looking from this council, is it a refusal, or is it a more strengthening up of some of those things that have been raised?
Combination of both, because first, I don't believe it's a viable agricultural pursuit on 20 hectares. You know, the conditions, you know, 6 to 6 megs is not enough water for any horticultural property. Yes, they have access to 120, but it's not allocated to that box. So without the water and without that ability to buy water, it's not, it's like a bird, it's not a farm. It's not horticulture.
Well, we've got a few conversations going on, I think it's a little bit difficult to respect what one another is saying when there's a bit going on.
Yeah, sorry, Madam Chair.
That's right, it's happening both ends.
Just some clarity, I think, you know, council really needs to approve it with met conditions, refuse it, or have it come back to another council meeting by granting an extension of time, or by suggesting an extension of time. So there's limited options.
If I can just add, in the context of the reporting which we've reviewed in the agronomy space, I would be concerned, and I suppose we would seek advice from Kim Cohope before we go down that path, in terms of they have the soil types that are available on that site and down to the lot sizes that are proposed, and with access to water, are viable to contribute to operating in productive agricultural uses. That's your main ground of refusal if you were to go down that path and the non-compliance with those outcomes. But I would be concerned if we got into a joint expert report situation, what the findings of that would put us in and what outcome we would likely actually end up with. And then reviewing cases around some other instances of fragmentation of rural land for subdivision of roads and certain things that affect, particularly around the Gympie area, even though they don't have access to water, they've been supported down to that lot size. And this is unique in the sense that it actually is afforded good soil types and it's afforded access to water, and if we can preserve both of those, it will remain viable. So that's just a consideration, I suppose. What's their time? If we want to extend for a further to the 28th of November or the 12th of December meeting, that's fine, each time.
Councillors, are you happy with that?
So, and would you seek, something from Kim? Would you seek?
We've sought previous advice from Kim on this matter in regards to this application in a few different areas, and we'll continue to elaborate on that advice. Yep.
You've got some consensus around that, Charlie?
Not move, whatever,
To the 12th, defer and
Defer
seek
to the-
further information? Yeah.
So then, just as guidance to the chair, you don't need to second that for a procedural motion. If that's all it is a deferral. If you'd like to put some detail in the resolution, then you would need to retract the second. But if it's just a defer pending additional information, it's procedural in nature, you can accept council representatives and leave it. Don't ask for a second to put it to the vote. If there's more, then it could be different.
Does that include the advice from the Kimco?
It depends. Well, that's just pending additional information. If you want to put more detail in than I've just described, it's not a procedural motion.
As it is at the moment, it's a procedural and doesn't need a second.
If it's a procedural motion, and that's what Councillor Brittle
One
is
would
moving
need
on
to
the
be
list.
added to that resolution. We would need to advise Jamie what that is, captured in the motion, get a second that for the vote. So are we happy just with that?
deferring or would you like more
Deferring.
information?
Seeking additional information, and satisfied that Jamie's taken that on notice today? Right.
I think you can, but yeah,
Yep, all in favour?
I'm not seeing the hands.
Procedural motion.
You need to put it again, Madam Chair.
I'm not too sure what you're asking is defer to what? Are we asking to defer, maybe coming back with
Pending this
a recommendation for refusal and a recommendation for approval and the options therein? Is that what you're asking for, councillors?
Well, I'm putting it to you guys.
Do you want to see what a refusal would look like and what would be the implications
Yes,
as opposed to an approval?
That's what I.
Second of that.
So that's what we're
That's
understanding?
different, that's not procedural.
No, it's not. I'll move that. I'll move
What
that,
about-
council asks the planners to bring back to our next meeting, two options of refusal or approval, and, we can talk about the, implications either way.
Yeah.
I'll second that one.
Right, so we're going to move for that recommendation. Marnie, are you keeping up?
No, I'm not.
No.
We will have to record the failed
Yes.
procedural motion. Because even though it was put, but the vote was unclear, so we'll record that. And now we're going into, I think, Bell Cipher.
Yes, Oswald Cypher, and
And this is where we might have some wording proposed either by Daniel or by Jamie and David. But the resolution is along the lines that Central Highlands Regional Council deferred its deliberations upon this development aid application pending further information in the form of reasons that would constitute a refusal and strengthened conditions reflecting council's views around, then you might say what those things are, something along those lines. So maybe if we can see Marnie put it up on the screen, we can vote it.
So the procedural motion.
Don't do that now, we'll run out of time today. But we will be putting up there that Brimble moved the procedural resolution and then it was put, the vote was unclear, and therefore it's ineffective. And then we will be putting up the substantive motion now, which will be Bell Cipher.
Yeah.
That Central Highlands Regional Council deferred its decision in relation to development application, and we'll put all the other detail in there, 401.2, 416.1, get along form, see if you can model this for 5 Limited, all that stuff, you don't need to do that now. So we'll put that in there, we're deferring that, pending further information, namely, and then we can put 2 dot points in. And David and Jamie can improve this, to think about improving this once we've got it up here on the board. Namely, 1,
Reasons for refusal.
now that'll need to be carefully worded,
Implications of refusal, wasn't it?
yes,
and
Reasons, implications.
reasons.
for refusal, and strengthen conditions to reflect council's views regarding, and it's over to you to list those in points, what they are. So is it's buffers,
Buffers, size of the lot.
lot sizes,
Allocation.
Council's concerns rather than views in regards to,
concerns in regards to,
Water allocation.
Easements was one.
Yeah, lot size, water.
Road.
lot size
Access
viability.
by security.
Access.
they can't be now.
Why biosecurity?
Because it's hugely important.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Next
It
one.
backs onto other properties.
It doesn't matter, everyone's got to have their own biosecurity plans.
And they're
I
viable,
get
they
that, I
maintain.
get that.
Now, Madam Chair, we can just flip to,
Order.
if we can, flip to David and Jamie to approve that, that would be good.
Alright.
The wording, you happy with the wording?
I'm just wondering about sort of the effective conditions, or rather, advice about effective conditions to address council's concerns.
Advice around effective conditions.
It's always easy to improve something.
That's right,
Good words.
about those things.
Effective conditions to address the, okay, is there any other?
With water access and water security for those.
Board access / security. Some of this stuff we have no jurisdiction over.
And security, it's not slash, the rule.
So we captured it.
The council's happy to leave it as a gravel road. That's my other worry.
Road
Next
surface.
thing I'll ask is bitumen.
Road surface.
Yeah, can you read that one, sort of? See what's going to come back in 3 weeks.
Is there anything else, Madam Chair, that we haven't captured?
Preservation
Preservation of
of status of agricultural land.
That speaks to use.
Yeah,
Of,
maybe,
of, irrigated cropping land. Preservation of status of irrigated cropping land.
It's prime land.
Yeah.
okay. We got it all?
Yeah.
Move councillor Gill, seconded councillor Stockton. Is everyone happy with that? All in favour?
Hold your hands up, please. Okay, you've got 7.
One against.
Right, we'll get the man.
So he's probably gone to sleep. Thanks very much.
No worries.
Thanks, Carl.
No.
Please wait.
What time of January is your thing on tonight? 6. Right, it's in Draydale.
Great.
Yeah, I've got things to raise, but.
You don't have to take control, Mr. Mitch.
All right, councillors, Parks People Play, item 13.3. Is Jamie still alive? Yes, she is. All right, Jamie, would you like to introduce this, Daniel, or can we fight for it?
I'll fly through it. Through you, Mr. Mayor, so council's report is to have a discussion around some provision rates for trunk recreation parks. Quick recap on the Park People Play, which Jamie will do, and we'll get into this discussion around allocating or adopting a breakdown of the provision rates as you can see in the recommendation.
Thank you, Daniel. So today is to talk specifically about recreation park provisioning rates. We've previously gone through sports park provisioning rates and have them bedded down, which is great. So stepping over to the other type of park type, which is wonderful. A quick recap of what Parks People Play is. It's our revised open space and recreation plan, which has been under review for a little while now. It's been a heap of fun. It will define our aspirations for parks in our region. It will then spell out and define our categories and subcategories of parks. It sets the provisioning rate at which we will deliver those types of parks and to what level of service will be delivered in each of those parks. It will be supported by an implementation plan, which will say, essentially, based on a gap analysis and audit, how we get from our current state of parks to our goal state of parks and set a time frame for that, whether it be 10, 15 years, whatever council's appetite is. And then we deliver it. Yay. So, in short, the purpose of provisioning rates is to make sure that we have enough parks for our existing and growing population. Provisioning rates are used in a circumstance where there's pretty much a reliable, proven number on which you can provide areas of park to service a set population. This is typically done for, in the recreation space, your local, district and regional recreation parks. It's not normally done for your reserve areas or your passive recreation parks, which are largely undeveloped. So today's goal is to agree on a recreation park provision rate. For the purpose of this discussion, it's essentially the number of hectares per 1,000 persons at which we will provide recreation parks. The parks which we are referring to, which are subject to provision rates, are essentially developed local, district and regional recreation parks. Everything else is categorised as an other park for the purpose of parks people play. And some examples include in Emerald, like Rifle Range Reserve, which is largely undeveloped and a reserve area, the extensions at each end of the Botanical Gardens to the bottom and top weirs. And across our region, we have about 455 hectares of these other types of parks. So today, our existing provision rate for developed recreation parks sits just over 3 hectares per 1,000 persons, which is quite high for a regional area. In that your more metropolitan areas, it's not surprising to see provision rates around 2.5 to 3 hectares per 1,000 persons. And that's normally due to the higher densities that are experienced in those areas, and therefore due to higher densities they're afforded less private open space. In all our metropolitan and rural areas in the Central Highlands, we are afforded large quantities of private open space in the form of big backyards, huge big acreage properties, etc. So normally regional areas will have a lower provision rate on that basis. So this graph shows where we are currently at in terms of what exists on the ground in the light blue colour on the far left. The existing conservation and recreation plan adopts a provisioning rate of 1.5 hectares per 1,000 persons. To get to that, it wasn't supported by an implementation plan, but to get to that, we would have to halve our recreation parks as they exist today, which I don't think is a great outcome. And then we put some alternate provision rates up there, which are 2.5 hectares in the grey, 2.7 hectares in the yellow, and 3 hectares in the dark blue on the right. The recommendation today is for 2.7 hectares of recreation parkland. The basis for that is that I suppose a lot of our, there's an expectation from our observations in the community for our parks to be delivered and maintained and renewed at a current standard. With the current provision rate of parks at 3 hectares, we are not delivering to those community expectations with our current operational budget in that space. So the scope to review it, revise that figure down to around 2.7 hectares would allow us to ensure that our parks are laid out more appropriately to service the urban areas that they're located in. Today, and it's a really great example around the north side of Emerald, where some parks are located down the back of cul-de-sacs, might have a whole street frontage of 10 metres and are surrounded by private properties and you can't even see into them. But we put playgrounds in there and things to that effect, and it's not a good outcome from a safety perspective, and I suppose even a like graffiti and damage perspective, because they provide opportunities for concealment. So, and then the other reason for having, I suppose, that slightly higher provisioning rate is the traditional standard of when development would occur that you have to provide 10% of your site area as park, without having consideration as to how that would fit into a broader park network across the region, what embellishments would go in those parks, etc. So that's the first part of the recommendation is for 2.7 hectares per 1,000 persons. We want to pause at that one and maybe discuss and consider before moving on to the breakdown of the rate. Okay.
Sorry, I thought you were jumping in and moving it, Charlie.
I was.
I've got a few questions. Yeah, I wouldn't like to see 2.7, I'd like to see it at 3. If they can leave it at 3 at the Gold Coast where there's strapped for land, I think that we live in an area that's wide open spaces. I don't think we should be going any lower than 3. The other thing is, have you been to community consultation on this? Does anybody know about it? Have you spoken to the communities? Because it's a little bit difficult what you're counting. Like, you know, what is a park, what's a recreation park, if the rifle range is a recreation park, or is the Mountain and Scripture a recreation park? It's just not defined enough.
For the purpose of calculating a provision rate, no, they're not included in the provisioning rate. They are classified as recreation parks other, but that's not subject to a provisioning rate.
I also, sorry Megan, I also think that, you know, as you said, Gold Coast, if they can stick to 3, they have housing blocks where they have 3-bedroom units, no backyard. We've got probably an average of 850, 900 square metres across our region per yard as well. You know, so a lot of us still play in our yards and not as such as parks. You know, so does that have a bearing on the differences? Do you find in regional areas that, you know, because it's a cost thing, do you have a smaller factor in regional areas as opposed to high density living in?
Yeah, that's definitely observed in the more regional areas that have adopted an open space and recreation plan. They will have a lower rate traditionally than those areas that have very high densities and less provision of private open space. I suppose particularly with the intention of what we will likely embellish the local parks with is it's going to be their sole purpose is to overflow that kind of space, that they're not going to have it with the current, I suppose, budget environment we're working in. We're not going to be able to be putting playgrounds in all of our local parks like has been for years. Because we can't maintain a revision to the standard that's expected in their community. So the reduced provisioning rate, I suppose, is an offset in terms of how we want to, I suppose, embellish our parks too, as terms of a budget and operational considerations.
You mentioned North Emerald about the amount of parks that we have at underutilised areas and over-capitalised areas, but we've also got in parks people play, or somewhere in our scope of work to liaise closely with state departments in utilising school infrastructures. I think there's 3 or 4 schools up the north end that are underutilised as open space as well.
Yeah.
And the state, 1, 2, 3 state schools on the north side, I think, or 4.
Yeah. So we haven't gotten to having those conversations as yet, and I suppose that's another consideration too. The sports parks, we have considered where the schools' grounds are being utilised by clubs actively and contributing to the provisioning rate for sports fields. We have counted them in the sports park provision. We haven't counted for recreation parks. We haven't counted schools, with the exception of Arcadia Valley as a bit of a unique space that contribute to recreation park provisioning, and will be a separate conversation that we'll have into the future if council wants to.
Jamie, through the chair, to whether it's 2.7 or 3 hectares per 1,000 people, from what we have currently, there would need to be a reduction of land. Have you given any thoughts of how that would actually occur?
Yeah, we have actually, and I suppose subject to council adopting rate will operationalise that as to how we play it out. But the intention is that once we have a provisioning rate, we will set our levels of service for each park. So that will look at where a park's located relative to the population to serve. So for a local park, it might be saying making sure we have parks within a 600 metre walking catchment. So we will map our parks, map out your 600 metre catchment and see where the overlap exists today and where those preferred sites would be that achieve better serving our population really in that regard. So, and there's some other examples where, because some parks are so, I think we had an example the other day where Margaret Gibson Park in off Stall Crescent, somebody who's lived in the area forever didn't even know that it was there because it's well conceived, concealed, behind private properties. So making sure that our parks are actually known, they're getting used to their fullest potential is the preferred outcome really for council and the community.
Sorry, Councillor Ross.
Jamie, so if you reduce it down to 3 hectares, so what happens to the remaining that is parks there now? What happens to that bit that you reduce it from?
Yeah, so it will, I suppose, be a case by case as each park is contemplated. In some instances, we acknowledge that they will just likely change from possibly being a local recreation park for a recreation park other. But from a maintenance perspective, as opposed to knowing that park, we'll be able to slash that park and there's efficiencies gained in that regard. So in some instances, there'll be a process where we are able to actually sell off that land because it is surrounded by residential and some people may actually want to purchase it, and we can add that into our cash flow to support the delivery of this. Other instances, there will be, it won't be suitable for that purpose.
All right.
Through the chair, if I can just answer, to answer Councillor Nixon's question around community consultations. So the Parks People Play has been on community consultation for a number of months, ceased a little while ago. So while specifically there wasn't a large dedication towards discussing provisional rates, there certainly was that conversation that occurred with community members who engaged with the particular roadshow that we ran.
Well, councillor, to your recommendation there is that provisioning is still at 2.7, and you've got a breakdown obviously from local to district to regional at a certain rate. Having with that resolution, we're going to having to move that. So this resolution recommends a 2.7 hectares per 1,000 persons. So that's a reduction from 3.04. Is that correct? Okay, so notionally that happens, and obviously it can happen in some places. It won't happen everywhere. All right. So, and then obviously in a breakdown for local recreation parks, 0.8 hectares, district recreation 0.6, and regional 1.3. So now it's been moved by Councillor Magan, a second by Councillor Godwin-Smith. All in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Against? 1, 2, 3, 5, 3, 4. This day is going to go down in history. We're going to have a great bloody mark-up here in the columns, I tell you. You people are obviously not writing these reports well enough. It's 5-3. Well, that'll be 6-3. 6-3. Right, line from updates. Jamie Lee, come on down. I hope you've been here for a while, Jamie. It's an easy crowd today, mate. Come on down.
Geez, you turn like Peter.
No. Bloody disgraceful. Seriously, if we want to pull some workload on here, we're going to start responding and respecting what people are doing and respond to it. We're not going to be here all day making decisions and having people write reports for 5 weeks and then muck around. I don't mind a good discussion, but I like people to pay attention. All right, Jamie Lee. So, Kirsten, do you need an introduction to this, or are we going to let Jamie Lee just rock into it?
I think Mr Mayor, if Kirsten can provide an introduction, if she hasn't already raised Jamie Lee or their discussions, that strategy.
That's called a heads up, Jamie Lee. From yesterday's discussion, thank you, Kirsten, for obviously taking all of Daniel's difficult subject. So, fire away, Kirsten.
Through you, Mr Chair. So yesterday in the strategy and briefing forum, we had a discussion about the flying fox issue in Botanic Gardens. Unfortunately, EHP couldn't be here to present the facts about the flying foxes and what we could and couldn't do in terms of dispersal activities in the garden. So we had a conversation about it, and we have this report today to discuss obviously the issue about flying foxes in the Botanic Gardens and just to elaborate on some of the items which were raised yesterday and clarify some points which were raised as well too. So I'll hand over to Jamie so she can present the report today.
Thank you, Kirsten. Through the chair. So this report here, as Kirsten said, is to clarify some of the issues that have occurred over the past few weeks, and also to seek some direction as to where council would like to move forward from here, and also to provide you on some advice on our perspective of it. So recently, back in October, approximately 10,000 little red flying foxes moved back into the Emerald Botanic Gardens. That was on the eastern side of the gardens, as opposed to where they normally, so on the western side of the gardens, as opposed to where they normally are in the rainforest or the western side. The situation there where they roosted was an issue for community wellbeing. It was a very high traffic area and it was creating safety issues, as well as it wasn't a suitable roost location for the flying foxes. They were in bamboo type foliage and it wasn't able to sustain them, and they were damaging the foliage and they weren't able to actually settle and roost in there properly. So it wasn't a good situation all around flying foxes or people wise. So we sought approval to disperse, and that was intended to go ahead on Tuesday the 17th of October. Unfortunately, leading up to that, when we did our inspections on Monday the 16th, partially due to weather, the flying foxes actually dispersed themselves and moved back over to the eastern side into the rainforest again. When they did that, a significant number actually dispersed and left the area. The whole colony did not actually move back into the rainforest. It was intended that we would still conduct the dispersal from there. But through that assessment process, a few things were considered. The main factor delaying that dispersal at the time was weather. We had issues with, we had some severe storm warnings for our area, but not just us, also other surrounding areas where the flying foxes would potentially go, were having severe weather events. And it was predicted that there would be more severe weather events, so if we were to disperse as scheduled, we would have chased them into that weather event, which would not have been beneficial for the colony, obviously. The other main issue that we faced with them crossing back over the river is it's actually a different parcel of land. So we had to seek approval from EHP again. Under our as of right authority, we have to notify 48 hours prior to commencing dispersal activities. So that whole process had to be restarted because the new roost location was considered completely separate from where we had intended to disperse. So that was what caused all of the delay there. In addition to the delays with the weather and the notification, there was also some issues around community notification as well, because where we moved onto the rainforest, they should be aware it's backing onto a housing estate. None of those people were aware that we were planning on making loud noise and smoke at 4 AM in the morning and late into the night. So obviously we couldn't just start dispersing under those grounds. In addition to that, our flying fox management plan, which I understand there's some discussion over yesterday and possibly reviewing, but it's considered a category B where the roost is located there. And management options under the plan for that are things like education, in situ management, modification of infrastructure of the roost, that type of thing. So all of those things taken into account, it was still scheduled for a tentative date to disperse on the 24th of October. But after discussions with EHP and reviewing the actual suitability of the habitat that they were in, it was determined that that may not be the best course of action and dispersal was cancelled. The reason for that is the location where they are there is what would be considered a suitable habitat, and it's where flying foxes have traditionally roosted for approximately the last 6 to 8 years. There haven't been any major issues other than earlier this year up until now. So each year they've done minimal damage to the rainforest, but it's recovered in a cycle each year. The flying foxes were born late in the breeding season and the rainforest has recovered through its normal growth cycle. The flying foxes actually help contribute to the variation of species in the rainforest as well. So provided the numbers stay low enough, it's actually quite a suitable location and there shouldn't be any long-term damage sustained to the rainforest. Unfortunately, earlier this year, we did have a significant number of flying foxes, little red flying foxes, come into the rainforest, and that was approximately 100,000 as opposed to the normal capacity of 10,000 that it can hold. That was due to weather events up along the Mackay and the coastline. All of the roost locations up there were affected by that, and that pushed all the flying foxes down here. That did do significant damage to the rainforest, but that's not something that's anticipated to occur now. The numbers we're looking at in the rainforest at the moment are between 3,000 and 4,000, and even when breeding season occurs, flying foxes are going through their mating cycle at the moment, and we expect that they will be pregnant from December onwards. Even when breeding does occur and birthing has happened, we're anticipating probably only about 5,000 flying foxes. The rainforest has quite successfully sustained up to 10,000 before. So that's another factor that's taken into consideration. The other issue we have, if we are to consider dispersal again, with the uniqueness of the situation with rainforest being located in the centre of town, we have to be aware of the risks of where we're actually going to force the flying foxes to go to. 94% of flying fox dispersals are not effective or successful in the means of that people expect. You move them from the location, but you cause another issue somewhere else. So we have a number of sensitive issues surrounding the Emerald Botanic Gardens, including the housing backing onto that estate, the children's playgrounds approximately 150 metres from that rainforest. There's all the other private residences of Emerald, which have all dense trees, most of which are suitable for flying foxes to roost in. We have Macindoe Park, which has quite a lot of foliage around that as well. The Emerald Pony Club, things like the CBD, all the fig trees on Edgerton Street there, Morton Park, a number of other parks in town, things like the Weir, Sunwater Weir, Emerald Homestay, the hospital, the airport. Whilst it's unlikely they wouldn't roost at the airport because there is a dense foliage area, there is still suitable tree coverage out there, and even if a small number were to break off and end up out there, the risk from that could be catastrophic with strokes with aircraft. Given the small number of the flying foxes that we have, 4,000, we do run a quite high risk of separating the roost and ending up with multiple roosts through town. It's highly unlikely that if we were to conduct a dispersal, that they would all just go and actually make it past the realms of Emerald and leave, because they have roosted here for many years and it's in their nature to come back to this area. And there's so many other suitable habitats in town. We run the risk of creating a lot bigger hazard than what we currently have where they're located in the rainforest. While we're running the risk of minimal damage to the rainforest, we can manage people's contact with them and that kind of thing where they are. Obviously, if there was an increased risk with flight paths or a sudden increase in numbers, then that would change our perspective on it. But the risks that we have in situ there are quite low compared to a lot of the other places where they could highly likely end up around town. Is there any questions about all of that?
Well, we had a pretty good discussion yesterday, actually. So, and I think I can speak freely when I say that certainly people appreciate obviously the approach all the rangers have to this problem. But the thing we talked about and touched on yesterday was that I suppose a couple of it's the relativity perspective is what we think is an old roost or accepted roost, and the rainforest is not an accepted roost from a community perspective. It's there because we planted it there, but it was certainly not. I guess when you create an environment, a natural environment, even though we planted it, the reality is you accept what comes to it. The reality is it's on the boundary of those residential properties. They were never there, and obviously they've now chosen that area because it is the most suitable. So I suppose what we discussed yesterday was perhaps looking at the flying fox management plan that we've got, and perhaps modifying it so that, I guess the default position always is that, we would prefer, given our experience, and I grant that each location is, peculiarly different, but the fundamental at the end of the day, where Mackenzie Park in Doringa, is that right, Charlie? And the park there, particularly that rainforest roost there, that's not, I suppose, an acceptable outcome for our community, and given that we're actually looking at spending literally millions of dollars to actually improve that and access to it, it would seem very strange we would then quarantine a part of that park, having spent significant dollars there for people to utilise it, and not being able to utilise it because at some given point of time. So, notwithstanding that rainforest wasn't there, well, we would have the issue perhaps of them being in some other place that might be down the river, as there's children here, certainly the island down the river opposite. Down further towards 2PH was always the location where flying foxes roost. It wasn't an issue in town because obviously there wasn't that particular environment creation. So I was just looking at the plan, and I was looking at page 37, yeah, which is the management of newly established routes there. So perhaps we can change some of those, just so that obviously the preferred option would always be that we when there's that sort of, I guess you'd say, starting to get the inkling of a roost establishing that we do, we're practical, and it always is, we're practical, and that's something that's not dictated by us, that our default position would be to disperse them, rather than, I guess, accept that somehow or another, because they're not in another part of the Botanic Gardens, that's okay back in the rainforest part. We've got, right now, we've got obviously, I guess there are people that probably think there has been quite a lot of destruction to run forest by the flying foxes earlier in the year, and they are still there, and obviously those people that are backing up there really do have an issue with them, and certainly that it manifests itself when they move slightly, and then we've had that issue with the Botanic Gardens going forward. So, I mean, clearly, I suppose what we want to establish is the default position is we really would want to move them on. In terms of where they might go in their backyard or some other location, I think the second part of that should be, I spoke briefly to Daniel about this today, was that we do encourage the state to give a clear indication as to where we might establish another roost that's not in a residential area, that isn't an appropriate place. And you know, and I know, all of us know that we can't make them go to that, but at least we can say, when we planted our rainforest, it wasn't for the benefit of the flying foxes to cause a problem in a residential area. It was to create amenity for a community. And if we've made an error, then we need to, with your assistance, move it someplace else. We'll move it on. So, is that appropriately what we're trying to get to?
Yeah, cut down large stack.
Just send a resolution.
That's the way to go, yeah. It's the first part.
Just cut
Second
down.
Through the chair, I'd just like to clarify a few things there. First of all, the rainforest roost in the Botanic Gardens there was actually included in the flying fox plan as a non-roost. So we wouldn't consider it as a newly established roost under the flying fox management plan. It is actually an established roost location, but that's certainly something that can be amended if that needs to be
Well,
amended.
I suppose those are the sorts of things, it's a known roost, mainly because no one sort of decided that it wasn't. We only planted it there 15 years ago, 16, 17 years ago.
But at the time the flying fox management plan was adopted, it was accepted that that was a roost location in the flying fox management plan, so we can certainly amend that. That's not an issue. If that's council's view, we can certainly amend that. There is a few things that we would also need to consider in regards to if dispersal is going to be the first port of call from a budgetary perspective as well. Dispersal activities, even if they would be conducted in-house, must be conducted with a knowledgeable person present. And on an estimation of probably 3 rangers and 3 Parks and Rec staff present, we're looking at approximately $1,350 a day in costs just in wages alone, without the hire of equipment or anything like that. In the current situation, if council was to decide today that they want to disperse and we were to move forward with that, you'd be looking at probably between 10 and 20,000 to disperse straight up without even having to.
And we've had reports that have just come back saying about the cost of cleaning up where they were, which is also another consideration. So I mean, I appreciate that's certainly part of the consideration. There are serious resolutions that have just been passed at the LGAQ conference, so all over Queensland, the issues are the same. It's not just us, other locations, where it's not necessarily about, an anti living creature sort of sentiment. It's more about the fact that I guess you'd say their presence in certain areas is problematic, and given that there is a kind of I suppose you'd say, management that's probably a little further than perhaps conservation groups would care to have it. The reality is that seems to be the consensus. And those costs would be something I'd be certainly happy to take forward to state and say, look, it's costing us to do this. Let's spend a certain amount of money and establish roosts elsewhere. But I think we've got to start somewhere and start saying, we don't want them in our botanical gardens, so that's the default position. And all our strategy going forward should be about where we should get to and actually move it. So
perhaps some draft wording, Mr. Mayor, might be along the lines of, and Marty, don't panic. That CHRC, in accordance with its flying fox management plan, decided to move on the flying fox roost presently located in the Botanical Gardens. Emerald. Further, that council seeks support from DEHP in the form of their cooperation for the establishment and development of a site to disperse the roost to. Council makes this decision following consideration of other mitigation options, because it is of the view that the present flying fox occupation is likely to be worse than if relocated to another site. And that is drawn from page 37. Management of existing roosts. If you subscribe to the belief that under this plan it's an existing roost, and I think yesterday, correct me if I'm wrong, we did consider other mitigation options. So that's a fairly proactive stance if you want to go.
Can you add the Kingston Park to that as well?
No, so through you, if I can just offer an alternative possible solution. If we just review our management plan, we can remove the botanical gardens as an identified area to maintain our potential management scenarios. So both of the particular scenarios around existing routes and newly established routes have the provision to disperse. But if we remove Emerald Botanical Gardens as one of their identified areas, and maybe another discussion for Doringa, Mackenzie Park as well, that gives us support to disperse in that area as it's not an identified area. It would just be possibly cleaner.
Well, I think that certainly would work. You could add a further, that council amendments, Flying Fox Management Plan to remove the Botanical Gardens as a managed site for Flying Fox roosters. And that might speed up our actions. If we just say, let's amend the plan, then it has to wait for another fortnightly cycle to come back and be amended, and then it doesn't necessarily legitimise the operation of dispersing just because you've taken the reference to the managed area out of the plan. I'm probably trying to be a bit as affirmative as we can be based on the feedback from yesterday's strategy meeting.
And through the mayor, I wasn't here to be privy to that conversation either. But again, through our current plan, we can still disperse within the Botanical Gardens while it's not currently in the scenario, the preferred position. If we're able to identify that they're currently being problematic with the information that the mayor and Scott have just indicated that they are, we will be able to take that supportive information to the Department of Environment and Heritage Protection to gain dispersal in there. So our current plan supports dispersals of both existing and newly established roosts. So I'm just trying to, I think that's potentially a cleaner way of bringing it back. So if we can identify the change in the particular on page 20 or page 336, you'll see Emerald Botanical Gardens are identified there as an established roost. So if we can have that reviewed, then we'll still be able to resolve to disperse in the Botanical Gardens in the meantime. So
just come back to a couple of points Jamie's made, and that is a lot of Flying Fox dispersals, particularly in larger towns, don't work. It has worked in Doringa, but in larger towns, like Charlestown is an example, or down in Bristol and those areas, where they've tried to shift them on, quite often the colony is fragmented and spread throughout the town or city. It creates a lot more problems than just one colony. And much as I don't like flying foxes in an area, sometimes knowing where they are is better than knowing where they're going to spread to. So.
Just through the mayor, wouldn't it be the ideal time to move them on while mating season before they start to breed again?
Yeah. Well, that's provided for in your management.
Yeah.
Through the chair, now is the ideal time to move on. They are early in the breeding season at the moment. Once we get into the new year, we're going to be looking at a lot more difficulties with flying foxes being heavily pregnant, and then we run the risk of dispersing with dependent young. If we are to disperse, we're certainly going to disperse if that's council's decision. If we are to disperse, though, we do need to have an intention of where we intend to disperse through. We can't simply say we're going to disperse and not have any plan of where they're going to go to. So council does want to consider that as where we actually want to move them to.
Well,
Send them.
and this is why I guess you'd say, and the concept of knowledgeable person is a little bit difficult to hold, because it's, I know with the greatest respect, you have a lot of knowledge and so do the rangers. There are locations here that other people are knowledgeable about as well, so if you do need extra knowledgeable people, if I guess there are some locations up the river and in other parts of the, certainly the island that it's known as a route. I don't know what it's referred to in the management plan. Yes. So the options here are we looking at a resolution that's pretty hard, or do you want to just actually review the plan and actually remove the condition out? What would you prefer to do?
Sorry, I have a question on dispersal, if you don't mind me asking. If some of the colony has spread into neighbouring lots, like in houses, if we do the dispersal, can we be assured that that colony will leave as well, or do you have to actually go into those people's yards, I guess, to do the dispersal? And if some get left behind, does that just mean that the colony comes back again?
Through the chair, all of those are very real possibilities. If they're spread over an extensive area, if they're spread in backyards and they have already separated to a degree, There's definitely potential that some will remain behind. If they establish a secondary roost, then that will require a secondary dispersal pursuant to the one that we would be conducting in Botanic Gardens. And we said before, when we lodge our notification with the HP, we need to specify exactly where the roost is located and what we're intending to disperse. With the current situation in Botanic Gardens, I would still consider it all one roost, and any of that area there would be considered in the dispersal plan. There's certainly potential that we would need to access our private property to effectively disperse. But with the small numbers that we have, there's a high potential that they may split and filter through people's yards and things.
So the safer option might be just to remove the roost as the designated roost out of the plan, and that still allows you your management options like you discussed, to do whatever they are with the small numbers or dispersing them or deciding on an option of if there are parts of the colony in private property or not, then you can come back to the plan. That still allows you to do that. It just effectively says that the roost itself in Botanic Gardens is not recognised as a roost.
Through there, we can certainly recognise it as a roost in the Flying Fox Management Plan, but specify that we don't accept that as a suitable location for them to roost. We can acknowledge that they are roosting there, but it's not somewhere that we want to accept that they're roosting.
Well, I think, is that probably our best option?
So there's some draft wording on the screen, Mr. Mayor. It's probably is a little bit too strong. But it does bring into play that request to the state government for support, which I think you wanted to capture. We could certainly tone down the first bit, we'll take it out. The last bit talks about amending the plan and removing the reference. It's strong in the sense that it's saying we're going to disperse. That can be the policy position of council, and it's up to the administration arm to operationalise it. And that needs thought, planning, resourcing, liaison, discussion with the state.
Through the chair, if we might just add, to seek approval to disperse.
Through the chair, I would like to clarify, I've spoken to the Department of Environment and Heritage Protection last week, and they are willing to support dispersal at this stage, provided we comply with code practice and have our knowledgeable person on site and conduct risk assessments and ensure we're not going to breach the code of practice by dispersing, which would be so things like killing flying foxes.
This will support obviously any activity that you want to
Marnie, just take the second O of roost.
Roost 2 on the second sentence, yeah, second one.
I was wondering if we
No, leave roost in, too many.
Too many O's in two. The next word after roost.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'll do that for
No, what you told us was somebody will pick up on that.
It is T double A, because it's also, the two's.
It's two alike.
It's a location.
Oh, you've got the
Yeah, two
location.
alike.
Yeah, it's a location.
Oh, two.
I could be particular about
Botanical gardens too.
Marnie, it's a botanic garden, that's what we can.
Send them west.
I know it's definitely botanic.
So not botanical.
Well, it's botanic, if you look at all our signs, it's botanic.
Yes.
So,
You got wind, isn't it?
everyone's reasonably happy with that?
Yes.
Well, it's not perfectly worded right. I suspect the intent is in it. Moved by Councillor Brindlecumbe, seconded. Councillor Cypher. Sorry, go. I'm struggling.
Well, that's okay.
No, that's, yeah, I feel like it too. So, all in favour? Against? Look out.
Oh, look out. What's
You've gone back to form, August.
Unanimous.
Thank you very much, Jamie Lee, and as I say, I really strongly commend you, Rangers, you're doing a fantastic job. I know sometimes it's not a very thankful job, and I appreciate that you're actually looking at what the bench says, so I appreciate your patience, we appreciate the updates.
Thank you.
And thank you too, Kirsten. All right, councillors, moving right along, item 13.5, the development applications update. One person saying, yep. Yep, okay. I suspect Kirsten did not actually go through all these others. You're just going to hit the high points of these. And
What was that, sorry?
I said, I suspect you're going to hit the high points here, will you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll make it short.
No, it's, I suspect some of them are fairly standard application.
Through the mayor, if I can, in terms of brevity, I did mention earlier today that we could run through the track software. If council's happy, we can postpone that for another day, given the time constraints.
Through the chair, just to give an update, this is the monthly development applications report for the development and planning team. So for Councillor Cypher's information, this is a report that was drafted for council on a monthly basis to give an update about development applications present and those decided in the previous month. So at the moment, there are 33 applications lodged with council for assessment. So these types of applications are summarised in the figure within the report. So they range from being undefined uses, personal training studios, to low impact industry, being motor vehicle workshops, reconfiguring a lot, and renewable energy facilities, being solar farms. Of the 33 applications, 12 of these triggered impact assessment, so required public notification at some stage during the application process. 17 of the applications are code accessible and 4 were change or extension applications. So you will note that we are seeing a consistent stream of change applications and requests for extensions to the development application period. So as always, the development list is updated manually by the development and planning team, and the information is available on council's internet page. So the list of current applications is available, and that also gives the community and staff the tool to use our track system to search development applications by the application number or the address, which is also contained in the table in the attachment that you have. So within October 2017, there were 5 applications that were approved, a reconfiguring a lot, the boundary realignment, a BWAP application, which is building work accessible against the planning scheme, an extension application, and 2 operational works applications. So if anyone has any questions about the current list of applications, we can certainly arrange a time to discuss the specifics about them, or if you have questions about the approved applications, we're happy to answer those as well also.
Just I had a just a call up the other day in regard to the development application. I think it's called Feedlot. You can follow it through the website and download the information. And I say this because they're on a fairly remote location. So people would have a fairly modest application to technology. And they found it very, very easy to follow, and certainly commended the team on the way that was presented. So they've obviously been able to access that.
So through the chair, it is quite literal on the internet as well too about which applications are requiring public notification at the moment. So there is a page at the bottom and all of the key documents that they can access to see what's going on. So
yes. No, very appreciated.
Just through the mayor, that one here, current development applications, number 1. The one from the 21st of October 2014. How much longer has that to go before it runs out of time? Has it been granted an extension already? Or?
Sure, so that one is on hold at the applicant's request, so we do need to consider their request, and we can give you a further update on that one if you so require. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Kirsten. Hammering those out.
I'll move that we accept the report.
It's just considered, we don't need a resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Nixon.
Just before Kirsten goes, Mr. Mayor, not to provide an update at all, but just let you know that it's that time of year again where we're dealing with covered stock. We've got a number of draft drovers moving cattle on our stock route network and roads, and that's presenting the typical problems that usually present. So our staff are certainly involved in dealing with those issues at the moment.
So that's goats, swine, foxes.
Well, that's just at the moment.
There's a pattern developing here in first. Did you ever think about being there?
No, I shouldn't.
All right, councillors, thank you, Kirsten, thank you, Daniel. Councillor, the corporate services agenda item 14.1, which is the annual report. I think what we're considering is the annual report. No, it's not. It's the, I suspect the change page, but Andrea, I'll leave it to Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, councillors. It's that time of the year we take stock of our achievements for the previous 12 months and reflect those in the annual report. It's a statutory obligation that we have to report the performance of our operational plan against our corporate plan for the 12-month period, and includes the annual financial statements of council for that period. A couple of points to note up front. Councillor Daniels has raised with me some amendments in relation to how the information is displayed around councillor remuneration, reimbursements, expenses and benefits. Those pages have been amended and will be subject to receipt within the content of the report that's provided to you. There has been a change in the legislation this year that council now has 30 days from the final audit sign-off of the financial statements to complete the annual report. That statutory obligation used to extend until the end of November previously. As a result, the annual report is here, particularly for the adoption of its content, and it will come into a final form through a more sophisticated publication that Andrea is working on in terms of how it presents to the standard that was presented last year to council around the coffee table style to improve its readability and accessibility for people to take information from it. Those amendments that Councillor Daniel has raised will be provided. The annual report, as it presents at the moment, contains a range of statutory information that we need to disclose. What we've tried to do this year is integrate that with the storytelling elements of what the annual report looks like through the development of case studies and reflecting the performance of the organisation against those corporate objectives. With that as the introduction, I might ask Andrea to make a few comments around the form of that report, the flavour of the storyline that runs through it, and then happy to take some reports around that, comments around that stuff.
Thank you, Jason, through you, Mr. Mayor. Last year we put up our annual report to the Australasian Reporting Awards, and as part of that they came back, we had to pay for it, but they came back with some feedback from our old report, from our last year's report, and what they were very keen to see was that we restructured the report to tell more of a story about the council and the community, and so we've just repaginated and changed the structure a little bit to try and get a better flow. And part of that was not to fragment the report into, like last year we had a lot of things in the legislative disclosure section, and they said just pop that through the report. So councillors' remuneration, for example, was in that legislative disclosure section, and now it's in the councillor section because it belongs to council. Same with all of the information about our organisation is all in one place, and the report has, I believe, much better flow and is more relevant. Happy to take suggestions. We included some more things about new citizens, about volunteers. We put the grants up front, the grants that are radio grants and the community grants in the community section and not in the legislative section, so that because that relates to the community.
And I mentioned this to Andrea and Jason, the only other thing I would like to have seen in that waste services statistics is recycling. I believe that could be included in future years.
Some of the statistics, they did ask for a 3 to 5 year, well actually 1 to 5 year trend, but asked for 3 to 5 would be enough.
some of our reporting has changed in the last 3 to 5 years, so we couldn't put 5 years in because it wasn't a consistent reporting method, which is a bit of a shame, and I think waste was one of those. Like last year, we've included some case studies and some staff profiles. The reflection we got on the annual report was that they were very good. The annual report last year was highly praised. They said that it was almost a bronze. There's only a couple of things missing. And some of that was the structure. They were very complimentary about our photographs and about the design of the report as well.
This year we've taken that feedback on board, but we won't be submitting the report up for the awards. We'll plan our reintroduction to the award phase based on the 17-18 corporate plan, operational plan, and current reporting structures that have a lot greater synergy than our current corporate plan reporting environment.
Any other comments, brother?
In regards to the councillor reports and others, just the CEO, are all of the referrals being reported?
I'll need to check that because it doesn't name the councillor, I don't believe. It says there's one. I think there's one there, but I want to check that because I think it may not be quite right. On page 108, it's got complaints in accordance with section 186F. Complaints about the conduct or performance of councillors for which no further action was taken under section 176. That says 0, I think it's 1. And complaints referred to CE, I think that's right, could be 2, I think it's 1. And complaints referred to NAIR, probably still 0. I just need to check it to make sure. But over the page on page 109, it says complaint, orders, recommendation, summary reported in accordance with section 186. The name of each councillor that was subject to an order. And there could well be a former councillor name there. I've just got to check it out, timing wise. So I haven't, certainly forgive Andrea, she hasn't had any input from me in this space and I haven't reviewed it. I need to do that. That could be an amendment. Unless you've got advice to the contrary, can you confirm?
I can't.
No.
And I had proposed a change to the recommendation, particularly to tighten it up a little bit. Money that was at Central Highlands Regional Council in accordance with section 182(2) of the Local Government Regulation 2012. Adopt the 2016-17 annual report, subject to minor amendments being confirmed. There seems to be a desire from the Queensland Audit Office and the State Government to continue to wind back between 2 and 4 weeks each year the reporting periods around the financial statements and our other statutory obligations, and that matter has been discussed with the Audit Committee. So we find ourselves now essentially 2 weeks back at the moment and probably 2 weeks further back next year. So we'll be likely adopting the annual report prior to the end of October 2018. Given that we have some sense of that change in timing, it will allow us to better collate, coordinate our efforts in meeting the timelines for the reporting going forward. Other than that, Mr. Mayor, if there are no other questions.
Right, is councillors happy to move that? Moved by councillor Roll, second councillor Middleton. That is obviously that in accordance with that section 182 brackets 2 of the Local Government Regulation, adopt that the annual report subject to minor amendments being confirmed. So we're happy with that. Those in favour? Against? Right, thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you, Jason. Thank you very much, Andrew. All right. We're on to the CEO report, which is on page 209 of the voluminous agenda under the CEO, which is a meeting dates and community consultation dates. Is that right, Marnie?
Yes.
Yep, that would be correct.
And there's amended community consultation date in the resolution for February as discussed yesterday.
Sorry, Marnie, you're going to have to speak in your microphone.
Well, I'll take the pressure off Marnie. Who prepared the report, and basically, councillors, as you can see, it's in a couple of stages. First is the proposed standing committee and general council meeting dates for 2018. Then there is our community consultation dates proposed. And based on the strategy meeting held yesterday, we did discuss community consultation and approach, and some of the changes have been reflected here. Namely, Comet Bluff, Dingo, Big Bend, Ringwood, Virginia is no longer the 14th, 15th and 16th of Feb. It's now the 20th, 21st and 22nd of Feb. The dates for Treswell, Buckland, Acadia Valley, Carnarvon, Ralston, Orion and Top Range remain the same, as do those for Timber, Claremont, Ruby Vale, Sapphire, Anki, Willows, Gentfields, Bowden, Cumming and Hopkinton. And I don't know, did we change any dates above?
Meeting dates, yes, we have changed them.
What did we change?
May and.
May. So May was the 15th and the 29th. Now, just scroll for me, please. Yes. No, it's still the 15th and the 29th.
Oh, no, for community consultation.
Oh, community consultation. No, we've got that.
So with the May date, the general council meetings were supposed to be held on the 8th of May. I proposed to move to the 15th of May, together with then the following meeting being on the 29th of May, as opposed to the 22nd of May. And those particular new dates are in the recommendation, together with the August dates due to a number of clashes as well. I propose to move the meetings from the 13th and the 14th of August forward to the 6th and the 7th of August.
And this 28th.
And then keep the meeting on the 28th.
So just an extra week in
That
between
date.
there.
So
No, it's
the
not
extra
our
week in between.
on and some other things.
Just, through the mayor, the 29th of May, how close is that to the Capella show?
Capella show is actually on the 25th of May, which is a Friday. That will be
Close to somebody's.
That will be close to Spring Shores, but that's still, it's still on the Tuesday. Show would be on the Friday.
Claremont, is it?
It's Claremont, which is Claremont and then Springshore.
Yeah,
Springshore will be the Thursday after that.
And we should think about Comet, it'll precede Alpha, so what's the date for Comet on the 28th?
That's usually on the Saturday.
Saturday.
Before.
Yeah.
It'll be a Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
It's always a Saturday.
Comet's always Saturday,
Yeah.
so it's going to come back this year.
You know, it's always been a Saturday. Even
Saturday.
before. Back in the previous life. So you're not a knowledgeable person. Back
Back for the bats,
sure, when the bats used to be on.
got it.
That's in the middle.
Celebrated on Saturday.
Right. So there it is, council, it's our work dates for next year.
So that sort of tries to avoid that shuffle up in the weeks, you know, trying to make it all together.
There's nothing in September, apart from the usual, we don't really have pulled on any community consultation then.
No,
When's the LGAQ conference?
sorry.
They'll get
It'll be
Google.
on
That is
October.
October, and it doesn't clash with these meetings.
Doesn't
so
clash.
no, I'm going to check that out.
This was a very, very long and detailed examination of the world, this construction of this list.
The reality is you can change it at any time, and we have done that in the past, with the so.
And I've just tried to foresee what we do know of,
So we're
The known knowns.
and the West of Queensland here.
Yeah, we
yeah, and we're
slot that
looking
in.
at
So who's
proposals.
that in?
We're talking about that on the 19th of May. Fancy, is it?
Welcome ceremony, proposing it for Thursday the 17th, with the conference on the 18th, with the AGM on Saturday the 19th, to then be followed by the
Roast
Labor
races.
Day on the Saturday. What we're proposing,
There's a few councillors involved in a working group that are helping pull that together with the staff, so
That is why all our guests are coming from obviously Western Queensland have the opportunity to have an event that I think are very salubrious. The legal firm support generously. Or will. We're on the open seat, you can't be named, so we look forward to that. And, we look forward to the indexed increase to the.
So does that clash with the Capella show?
Okay.
No.
So that would, so the conference would come in and allow them to come in. So is someone happy to move those dates? Moved by councillor Grimble, seconded by councillor Gordon-Smith. All in favour? Against?
Just a parting shot, Mr Mayor. That community engagement following the council meetings, we made a commitment yesterday at the strategy meeting to revisit our process around community engagement. So that's a report that Daniel will bring back to council for consideration. All right. If you like, I can lead off on the next one.
Yes, that's the Sister City delegation.
Certainly, and I've got Linda in the audience, so come on down, Linda. So Linda's our supervisor for community development, and I'm not too sure whether Suzanne, if you want to support Linda, come on down as well. This is an opportunity for us to reciprocate the goodwill between Japan and Australia through our sister city relationship. I won't steal Linda's thunder, except to say that at this stage, the timing that we're looking at is mid-February, 8th to the 30th of February are the dates that Marnie's provided to me, but I'd like to hand over to Linda and Suzanne to present the report.
Thank you. Through the chair. Council's had a long, active relationship with our sister city in Helsinki City since, and formerly Fujisawa since the 1990s. Initially, this relationship focused on the student exchange program. However, the last few years, we've been able to broaden it on further cultural activities and also adult learning. Last year, Mayor Katsube visited our region to meet our newly formed council, and he really enjoyed the opportunity to see our region. Both councils at the time realised that they shared many things as local government, some of the challenges, responsibilities, and also priorities. In Helsinki City had the opportunity to learn from our council, and just recently they had their elections. Katsube was re-elected, there is a new chairman, and there are 9 new councillors in the council of 31, considerably larger than ours. Mayor Katsube has extended an invitation to Mayor Hayes to reciprocate the visit in February next year. The things that they'll be looking at and also reciprocating what they saw here was City Commercial Services, the sale yards, waste disposal centre, disaster management preparedness, and also the water festival. And I'm sure you appreciate all those things are relevant to our region. This report recommends Mayor Hayes accept the invitation to visit in Helsinki City next year in 2018. Any questions?
Thanks, Linda. If I can just add to the resolution or recommendation is deliberately worded not to name the manager and/or senior officer. That is a decision for the administration in conjunction with the mayor. But as you can see, Linda's pointed out, if you look at both the last sentence of the recommendation and also page 215, it does bring in a number of different topics. So if you look at commercial services and conference centres, that the impacts on Michelle Webster and Sandra Hobbs, sale yards, Michelle Webster, waste, Daniel, disaster management, Gerard, water festival, sustainability festivals, Sandra, Gerard. So there's a number of options there, and certainly I'll be keen to, I haven't had a conversation with Linda, Suzanne or Daniel yet, but I'll be keen to certainly offer an opportunity for Linda to be part of that process, given her long association with Duringa and Central Hong Regional Council in this relationship over the last many years. So that part of the resolution is worded deliberately to allow the administration to come up with that in conjunction with the mayor. So we don't need to fill that in. Mr. Mayor?
Well, it's not I suppose I reciprocate to Mayor Katsube's letter, which is obviously very carefully drafted. And I was just, I suppose, mindful of the fact that his invitation and probably having that experience last year of he and Chairman Chivo, who was re-elected as well. There is now a new chairman, I think 30 councillors, so there is in fact obviously quite a significant amount of councillors and also the mayor and chairman, I guess I tacitly understand there's certainly a slightly different connotation to their roles than perhaps here. But certainly I indicated to Linda that I would very much recognise last time that Mayor Katsube certainly indicated that he would like to probably advance, I think, some more. And I think the experiences they had here last time where they practically looked at some of our operational opportunities really sort of excited them a little bit. Notwithstanding that, I have to say that this is I've not visited and I'd be very happy to. And if councillors have some other ideas about what we might do, well, I'm happy to hear it.
Please move the recommendation.
Sorry, did you have a question, Christine? Sorry.
Is there an opportunity for others to go at their own cost, or is it, do they only want you and?
That's the sensitivity that I really didn't quite understand, and I suppose I haven't understood that. I suppose, responded to the fact that Mayor Katsube and Chairman Chiba came last year, and I mean, I realised there's 30 other councillors. I didn't know whether, as a respectful sort of observation of that we only sent that many back, notwithstanding the fact that other people might pay, or I don't know, Linda.
Through the chair, I think HRCP would welcome others to attend. And you'll remember back in, I think, 2015, 30 of us all went on holidays together and paid our way, the staff and councillors, and they really appreciated the opportunity.
Through the chair, that was different. That was a different circumstance, of course, because we were making good on an old commitment. Just clarification as per page 216 under the financial section of the report. That's the cost associated with sending one delegate. There is provision in council's budget for 3 councillors to attend. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the right thing to do, but that's what the allocation in the budget is for.
So I don't want that to be an issue. I was just observing.
I don't want it to be an issue.
No, but I mean, as Linda said, if they're quite happy with people attending, I'd be quite happy to leave out, as I said, other people to go.
It's cheap for someone else to go. Just for.
It's more about through the chair doing the right thing. And I take Linda's point, and she has the most experience about this relationship, so I'd certainly be guided by her views. But it's about doing the right thing, delegation size wise. I guess it is more about that reciprocation. But as the Mayor said, there's a desire from Mayor Katsube to unpack some operational areas, namely commercial services, disaster management, economic development and waste management. So there's 4 distinctly different types of themes there. So the delegation, I think, if that's going to be a deliverable, some of the parties need to have those skills.
Well, so I suppose not to move over that opportunity, I suppose, I'm quite happy obviously to go and nominate those other people, and we can discuss, I think, with Linda, perhaps if there is that opportunity, or of other councillors, perhaps. Is there some, is there some councillors who would like to attend? I mean, there's the point on that.
Depending on that senator.
I've been there several times. You've got nuclear reactors and tsunamis and
I understand that if it's President wants this time, well, that's quite okay.
Well, then, I mean, do we need a clarification of that, or do you think we go with the face value, I suppose, of the invitation? What do you think? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Through the chair, I think a reasonable, like when we host people over here as far as transport and that, we're up to 6 maybe. However, I can check for you. And also, it is at their cost and their budget, their financial year starts for April, so they would have budgeted for some allowances, so you do need to consider their budget as well. Because they host accommodation and everything.
All right.
So you could record some names, Mr. Mayor, subject to defining it as additional information, rather than have to come back.
So councillor Ross, you can? Yep.
It's only 2 nights.
I'm not sure. People.
Is it only for 2 nights?
Through the chair, to cover distance for, to see those things, I think it's looking at 3 or 4 nights by the time we get there.
So that 500 for accommodation is wrong.
Now, will they meet all those costs?
This is our accommodation to get there, and they look after what we actually do there.
This is our cost prior and then all the other costs are theirs. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
That's exactly right.
Rail pass, flights, accommodation, domestic accommodation here, and those other expenses, as Linda's pointed out, they would meet those costs, that's part of the relationship. But in respecting that, Linda will check in with how much.
But perhaps given that we do need to take 4 people, perhaps 2 councillors is enough. We have to take, potentially, people to respond to this request.
Yeah, I'd certainly want to work with you, Mr. Mayor, to determine the 1 or 2 council staff. And that's what I think it would be, 1 or 2 council staff. So you set 2 there max.
Yep. All right, well, councillors, there you go.
Recommendation, yeah.
So Hayes and Roll, along with selected EM and or SO.
So I'm going to move that. Moved by councillor Robert Smith, second by councillor Fiddlecombe. All in favour? Yes?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Linda. Linda.
Right, just keep it up, I'm not sure
You tried to hold it.
Councillors, general business?
Yes.
Councillor Sol.
Yes, I just yesterday asked for some feedback on the letter from Christina Benton about the small business she wanted to open, the gym.
Yes.
Just wondering if we could have a discussion on that. Or could we carry it over to, I think she needs a response.
She will get a response, councillor, through the mayor. I have both Kirsten Byrne and Daniel Fletcher here who can provide a status update, which is probably appropriate, rather than getting into a big discussion, but we can certainly give you a quick update. And either Daniel or Kirsten.
I'll just quickly go through you, Mr. Mayor. So we'll prepare a formal response that goes back to him, and the planning team are putting together that now, so Chris has got a bit of an update to provide for everyone.
So through the chair, just in relation to a number of the items raised in the letter, we're providing some more information on that in relation to the fees and charges, which were quoted by the DAT and the type of use that's proposed for every use, because that often distinguishes the amount of fees which are payable. In terms of the waivers, we are looking into this and can provide an update on it. And we'll also liaise with the business owner in terms of retail development incentive policy, which we have business opportunities to the region. So this was before we came on, so we can do that as well. So yeah, we'll have those funds to business owners there. So just to know and see what we can do to assist them. Just in terms of fee waiver, for fee waivers, if it's not a not-for-profit organisation, and it will not come from the council for decision in relation to waiving those fees. We would expect that they have done due diligence in terms of taking previous uses off the site, but that is part of the development application process, which would be therefore be required by anyone to operate business in the region.
So that follows on to my next one, which was the one from Kathy Watson Brown regarding the solar farm accommodation.
So through the mayor, if we can follow on with either Kirsten or Daniel providing a status update. I'm assuming that councillors know what we're talking about here. Some of you may not have been looking at emails throughout the meeting, which
Came through last night. That was last
All
night.
right, good, so you are aware of it, because I don't want to be talking in broken English, that's all, so either Kirsten or Daniel.
Through the chair, so in relation to that, we are looking into, raised a number of concerns at the type of accommodation that will be offered at Glencore for the workers with solar farms, so we do need to look into that in terms of their approval, whether or not they can operate short-term accommodation or whether they are available to provide short-term accommodation for those workers. So we will respond to each of their points in relation to that, and whether the domains are suitable for short-term accommodation. There's a lot of issues that we need to address.
There's a huge amount of issues there. Can we get some of that feedback as well?
Yeah, sure. So once we've prepared a letter, we can circulate it to the council.
Thank you. Because both those issues really affect small business in our small communities. So it's important we get it right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Simon, thank you. Any other individuals here? Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, just two things. We had, or three things. We had the opening of the cancer fountain. The ladies had a cancer fund luncheon, and I think they raised another $1,200 at that, but we had a little tiny ceremony to declare that fountain open. And we just want to say that, you know, it's really good to see that happening, and finally we've been talking about it for about 10 years and finally there. So thanks very much to everybody that contributed. We actually put some of our community reference group funding towards that. So it's good to see something achieved. The other thing, the opening of the cenotaph, it looked a little bit scary when it first started to go up, but on the day, it turned out to be a really good day. The cenotaph and the surrounds look great now, and thanks to council for their contribution to that. The RSL over there, 2 or 3 members, whatever there are, they put on a great show, and had Adelaide people from Townsville and Navy Bugler from Townsville to come down and really put some authenticity to the whole show. Really good crowd, good turnout for the day. So thanks to me for coming over, and Councillor Roth was there as well. So that was really good. And the other thing is the Ivy Anderson home, just wondering where that's at. And seeing as Daniel's there, you've got the plan ready for me to take on. Very good, thank you. Thanks, Scott, for passing that message on. Thank you. And I'm just talking to Ken O'Dowd and April Compton about aged facilities tomorrow. And we need aged facilities in every community, I think, in this area. Emerald's probably especially where they need it. So I will be including the other centres as well as Crenshaw, and I'll talk about aged accommodation with Emerald tomorrow. So.
Just in addition to that, through the Mayor, Daniel's looking at the budget and whether or not there's allocation there to support the development of the Ivy Anderson concept to a shovel-ready status. Whether or not we can spring for a consultant to get the drawing finalised and the quantity surveyor report, so that the community and the committee members can lobby their heart out with the federal government to try and attract the funding. And if we can get it to that stage where the council can say it's done its bit, but at the moment that work, that final work, has been just sort of lingering for a couple of years. So we're going to try and bring it home if there's sufficient budget to do that. If not, Daniel may even bring back a request for an amendment to the budget. So.
Yeah, thank you for that, because look, our little community over there is getting a bit aggro about nothing happening, and you know, and the committee themselves are saying, well, you know, council can't do it, we'll try and get that next step done ourselves, but it would be good to get that council support. And there was 50 in the original budget, so I don't know where that's gone, but you know, if we could have that, that would be great. Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Scott.
Sorry, Kirsten, you had something to add there?
Through the chair, I was just going to confirm, Councillor Nixon, there is 50,000 allocated to the Ivy Anderson building schedule and final design, so that is updated in the briefing note for you.
previous councillor.
That's excellent news.
Yes, that's great, thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten.
That's really good.
So can we get someone to take that too?
Yeah, so Daniel and Kirsten will work with Councillor Nixon on that, on getting someone to do that, because we have to outsource it, to get it completed in a timely manner, and then we can say it shall be ready, and then the committee can go to the line. With council support, of course.
Yes, thank you.
That was some of the representation we made recently in Canberra for around aged accommodation, so.
Councillor Benson for that.
Okay.
Right, any other general business? All good? All right. I don't think people will be so pleased for me to say closed session in their lives. Councillor Beale, good. Oh, sorry.
Even to,
The lady Before we close, sorry, the later agenda items is effectively the adoption of those minutes.
If I can, Mr Mayor, draw your attention to an anomaly.
Yes.
That was in the community's standing committee meeting, failing on my part to pick up on the fact that Councillor Paul Bell AM was an observer rather than a member, and therefore a motion was attracted from him to approve those community consultation minutes. And you'll note if you read the minutes that that decision therefore has no effect. So that report is being represented here this afternoon for council's consideration at the general meeting. So all those reports, if bundled, need to be re-adopted. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
All right, so councillors, that is the community consultation minutes. They were actually as part of the agenda of the community's standing committee. So they go from page 26 to page 79 on this late agenda item, so we're going to re-adopt those. So effectively we fired a blank there, and now obviously the general meeting captures that, and if we can adopt those. So councillors, you're adopting the minutes of the Finance and Infrastructure Standing Committee that was chaired by Councillor Godwin Smith this morning. The minutes of the Community Standing Committee chaired by Councillor Brindlecombe, and the Leadership and Governance Standing Committee chaired by Councillor Robb, as well as those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 community consultation minutes that were presented there. We'll put it in the bubble. So is someone happy to move those? Move on to Councillor Nixon, second Councillor Brindlecombe. So that's all of those. All in favour? Against? Thank you. So that's 8-0 because Councillor Daniels is not here.
No, we didn't. Well, I think what the mayor did was the first 3 minutes and then the bundle reports. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so you.
So I attracted one resolution.
Well, why not? I think it was fine. Done now. You've done 4
by having no meaning in the instance that they were adopted incorrectly, they just effectively line up like any other minutes. Is that correct? Like we would normally do at the start of the general meeting.
I think, yeah, well, let's just clarify, did the mover and seconder just adopt the 3 standing committee meeting minutes in one go plus?
Yes.
Yes, well, it's done, it's done, and I'm sure it was fine. Yep. It's all good. Very streamlined, Mr Mayor, I like the approach.
Sorry, Councillor.
On page 20 of 84, you've got general meeting of council, and it's actually the leadership and governance committee meeting.
Where, sorry?
It's above the minutes content on page 20.
Page 20, yeah.
General meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Just change that to leadership and governance.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, so that's all the late agenda items, mate. All right, councillors, there is a late agenda item, but it's in the closed session. So, the standing orders, any of those officers who are not required from any of the closed session items, so we'll move it, if we can move to go to closed session, please. Moved by Councillor McIndoe, second by Councillor Brindlecombe, all in favour? Next, thank you.
Team. We're on.
Welcome back, live streamers. Welcome back, everyone, to open session of council. Council, is there a resolution there relating to the matter that we just considered? And that resolution reads there that there's a delegation there to the CEO to settle on the outstanding rates matter. Someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor McIndoe, seconded by Councillor Brindleton. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Gentlemen, and Patterson, I'm sorry to have to advise you of this, but due to the circumstances again, and I know this has happened here twice now. We get on things we don't like it, but that's not the case. I mean, obviously, to pay respect to your reporting, we would have the right amount of time to do it, Patterson, and we certainly, there are report will also have to be deferred, but certainly, if we get a move in a second, that the remaining business contained in that closed session agenda be deferred to the next council meeting. Moved by Councillor Roll, seconded by Councillor Syper. All in favour? Against? Thank you. All right.
Very good. So, you already come in and do a pleasant review with you.
All right, thank you everyone, thank you GMs. Councillors, those are going to game plan, obviously, will follow down the town hall. Sorry? It's here, isn't it? Yeah, just make it crowded this morning. And I better get going. You take the prize. The meeting is closed, ladies and gentlemen.
What a day.
Yeah,